the demographic is growing rapidly. A lot of women are coming into that cohort. And it's a really overlooked opportunity, especially in the wealth management space, where there is a huge amount of wealth transfer happening to these 50-plus women. They're saying that basically there's about $40 trillion that's going to make it into those women's hands over the next coming decades.
Hello and welcome to this week's Tea Break. I'm Al-Enazi, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Yuri. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Rifai from Creating Future Us, an advisor to investors on the ethics of digital transformation. Dee, how are you?
I'm doing great. Very happy to be here.
Thanks for
with our lovely
us.
tea.
Yeah, and what tea have you gone for?
Today it's very special, I have to tell you. It's rose-flavored green tea with a bit of rooibos in it.
Dee very kindly brought in this exotic concoction for us, which I must say, I'm enjoying it very much. And it's good to have a human touch to that tea, because I was in Warsaw recently, Dee, and there was this magnificent machine on the platform of the central station, and there's a robot in there who makes tea or coffee. You pay for the cup, they then wave you off onto the train. And I know, Dee, that you've been speaking to a lot of these financial firms. What sort of priorities did they talk to you about in the way that they observe AI?
Life in AI moves at a much faster pace than life in general. So back then, people were much more focused about implementation, but today people are moving past implementation. And so all these financial firms, investors, and particularly wealth and asset managers, are rethinking their entire business model really around this idea. What happens when you democratize intelligence? What happens when intelligence and expertise become super cheap, which is where we're heading now? It used to be the old way that we did workflows and we formed companies and groups is along expertise lines. But when you can have 20 experts at your women's disposal in the name of agents, and you can reconstitute them in different ways at the drop of a hat, right? You don't have to have now the silos of expertise anymore.
I think that mirrors quite closely what we've seen in asset management, because when we started writing about it, it was all about the customer experience, modifying the way the human relates to the firm or the advisor. And now it's actually about how the assets are managed. Ali, that's something you've been writing about, the asset management implications. What have you found in your research?
AI is transforming wealth management by enhancing portfolio management and rebalancing processes. Client expectations remain a challenge, and as investors often overestimate AI's capabilities. Despite AI's role in data analysis and trade execution, human judgment remains essential, to some of the experts said to me, and for strategic decisions, that is, particularly during market turmoil. Our colleague, Elisa, has been conducting her annual Global Asset Tracker survey of 50 private bank chief investment officers overseeing $25 trillion of client assets.
That's not an easy task.
That's definitely not an easy task.
Well done, Elisa.
Definitely, exactly.
Shout out to Elisa.
That's right.
and for many of them, AI is the number one investment theme.
That's right.
Dee, everyone's talking about AI replacing jobs, but what second-order effects are we missing that will transform how wealth is created and preserved?
The creation of wealth is happening now. It used to take us decades to create wealth. It used to take 7+ years to reach unicorn, on average unicorn status. Today, it's compressed down, and it's going to probably compress even further. People are talking about companies that are pure AI from now on, no human involved, right? It's basically you create a corporate, and that corporate is run and managed and creates products that are purely, and imagine when you bring robotics in, what happens? You can actually create physical products as well. But that changes the whole wealth formula, the wealth creation formula, because we're used to thinking along old time frames, and we're going to have to think in new time frames. And that shift of wealth is also very interesting, is where do you start to depreciate wealth? You have to really be on top of this in order to catch the wave, because you can end up with legacy assets before you can blink twice. So I think it's really key now to just keep an eye on where that wealth creation is happening.
It's those two things. It's AI and geopolitics at the moment, and this new world order, which emerging with many pronouncements, obviously, from the White House. And we had a very dramatic article from Doug Bandow, who was advisor to Ronald Reagan, and talking about Donald Trump getting much closer to Vladimir Putin's point of view, what that will mean for Europe in terms of upgrading the nuclear arsenal and the implications of this new multipolarity for investors as well. Are there any other kind of more hidden factors which you think that that might really influence the views of investors and the returns that they'll be getting?
My personal view is I think we've been on an inflation trajectory, and that inflation trajectory is going to continue. And what's going to drive that is this fragmentation that's happening globally now. Because if you think back to kind of the order we were in pre-Trump, and it was basically, we're going to grow the pie, we're going to all collaborate and work together to grow the pie, and all of us are going to benefit. It's now become a zero-sum game, and everyone's competing for resources in a fixed kind of pie. So you've got this fragmentation that's going to lead to major supply chain disruption. Things are going to get manufactured by strategic intent now, not where it's cheapest, but where it's strategically going to be important to have that. The cost, the spending is going to go up a lot. And also cost of doing business. Because if you are a company now, it used to be you could go globally and everything was easy. Now you've got minefields everywhere to be negotiating around. And there's all these barriers and tariffs and legal barriers and whatnot. And that's going to create friction in the system.
It's essentially some very aggressive men dividing up the world between them, battling for resources like they're fighting for tools in the school playground. But when we travel to Asia, we see a lot more women, senior women in very powerful positions, running banks, running wealth managers, running companies in their 50s, some in their early 60s, in very powerful positions, which we don't see so much in Europe. Is this a demographic that you feel has been ignored?
It's a generational change. If you think about kind of when we grew up, our grandmothers, who were probably at the time 50-something, seemed like such old women to us. And it was like life was on that slide out. And today, when you look at 50-year-old women, they are at the peak of their career. On average, a woman lives into her 80s, and 87's the average age, but into 80s and 90s. And so you've got another 30, 40 years potentially to go at 50. And you've got a lot of earning power still ahead of you. And the demographic is growing rapidly. A lot of women are coming into that cohort. And it's a really overlooked opportunity, especially in the wealth management space, where there is a huge amount of wealth transfer happening to these 50-plus women. They're saying that basically there's about $40 trillion that's going to make it into those women's hands over the next coming decades.
So we've had several articles about managing money for wealthy women, the way different banks are approaching this. One from Judy Zhu at Standard Chartered in Singapore, and one from your good self. What did you find about the different ways that money is being managed by private banks for women of substance?
Private banks are addressing this gender wealth advice gap by focusing on building trust and financial confidence. You know, women prioritize long-term security, independence. The common message is wealth firms must evolve, offering tailored advice and education to empower women and address their unique financial challenges and priorities. And Yuri, you've been looking at how data is gathered around this demographic. What have you discovered?
Banks have all this data, but how do they use it? Do they clean it? Do they store it? Do they analyze it? And this is what the startups are saying to us. That there's one chap that I was speaking to last week. He was at Coutts Private Bank, and he was saying the wealth managers, they have this data, they don't use it properly. They don't get into behavioural scientists, the people who look at emotions. And I'm curious, are you seeing this? How this demographic and cultural shift is being monetized, how the 50-plus female is being empowered. How should wealth managers actually respond to this?
So there's going to be a lot more spend on healthcare because women want to enjoy those years. They don't want to be disabled or have to be in and out of hospital. So a big focus on health. And it's crazy because now women entrepreneurs that are 50 plus are some of the most successful entrepreneurs. They're entering entrepreneurship at twice the rate of the average population. So you're seeing a lot more older women go into entrepreneurship. Why? They get to a stage where they have the network, they have financial comfort. And they're like, hey, I don't necessarily want to work the way others want me to work. I'm going to work for myself, doing the things that I care about. And they bring some amazing other women around with them. They want to change the world for the better. They're not just there to make money. And quite a few of them make a lot of money, as it so happens. The business I'm launching now is literally looking exactly at that. How do we empower women with the latest and best knowledge to be able to do that? To network with each other and help each other, because ultimately women like to coalesce around community.
And that's why we're delighted to have you here, Dee. We've got the empowered woman entrepreneur who can make sense of the data. We've got Ali, the next generation analyst. I think it's me who's going to be fading into the area of insignificance and just sipping my tea in the background.
I'm sure that's not the case, Yuri.
Yuri is definitely not going to fade anywhere. He's right up there.
Yeah. Dee, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you for watching this week's Tea Break. For more on tech, check out PWM's Wealth Tech Awards coming up in May. And make sure you watch our weekly Tea Break either on the PWM website or the YouTube channel. See you next week.